So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a tale of two markets. Shh, shh, thank you. Please go outside if you would like to network. A tale of two emerging markets. In this panel, we're going to look about what's driving these entrepreneurs to look outside of Europe into emerging markets, where they're placing their bets and investing in ecosystems that others might overlook. We're joined by John, who's founder and CEO of Revo Tech over there, right in the corner, who's now a healthcare investor, effectively, right? Use your microphone. Still an entrepreneur. But you have portfolio companies.
What?
You have portfolio companies.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
You have a portfolio of companies.
Our portfolio,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I'll continue my introduction.
Yeah.
And next up, we've got Nate, who's co-founder of Tyme, Tyme, which is a multi-country digital bank. You've heard of Revolut, you've heard of Monzo, no doubt. Well, Tyme is trying to do this in other countries, such as the Philippines. He's co-founder and CEO of GoTyme Bank in the Philippines, in fact. But John, if I can turn to you first of all. Now, I was interested to read in your history that you were the founder of a startup which was a voice social network.
Wow.
Which
Okay.
which I thought. Now, do you regret that was called Vound, Vound?
Yeah.
Now, do you not regret going ahead? You could have been the Mark Zuckerberg of voice.
True. Listen, I always have a small regret for that.
Yes.
But there was required huge funding in order to succeed, so yeah. Maybe I could restart it, you know, you never know.
This allowed users to create and share their voice combined with a photograph.
I'm so surprised he found it. Like,
That's why I'm a journalist.
I'm
and
getting nervous.
and ladies and gentlemen, here's a picture of him as a baby. I'm joking. Anyway, you realised that maybe that was going to be tough to scale, but you launched and created InstaShop, which was sold for possibly a little bit more than a voice app for $360 million. Do you want to just give us maybe the skinny version of how you did that? Because you decided to go to, it was an on-demand marketplace in the Middle East, based in Dubai, not Greece, but you were based out of Dubai. What made you decide to go to the Middle East?
Yeah, great. So I just had an internal transfer. So I ended up in Dubai. I worked for a corporate company for Philips Electronics. And that's how it basically started. If you want the short story of InstaShop, it basically was going from minus $100,000 to 360 million valuation in 5 years.
That's amazing, isn't it?
That's the full story. What enabled that is basically the model. So it's a hyper-local grocery marketplace, and that's something that you could build very fast with very low capital, and you could scale it reasonably fast, of course, if you have the team to do it. So the model, if you ask me, marketplace is a weak spot for me. So also the new endeavors that we're going to discuss are in that direction.
I see, right. So, but and then that was acquired by Delivery Hero. And I think to date it's the biggest technology exit for a Greek entrepreneur. Is that right?
It depends on what you define as exit, but I guess, yeah, it probably is. There's a lot of partial exits. There's companies with bigger valuations, of course, today that exist. So in terms of a complete exit...
Certainly at the time.
Indeed. Yeah.
It was,
even
good.
today, I don't know, we have to ask the VCs, but I believe it still is, from a technical point, the biggest exit, yeah.
Fantastic. And it's fantastic that entrepreneurs might do an exit, but then stay in the ecosystem, have other ideas, maybe invest, and so that's fantastic to see that you haven't disappeared to an island somewhere.
No,
a Greek
not at
island,
all.
perhaps.
No break at all.
Fantastic. So Nate, just getting a little kind of an update from you. Tyme's raised $215 million funding, so to date. And it's interesting, I was reading that you take a kind of a different approach. A lot of us, when we think of neobanks, we think of it's just going to be, an app on your phone, whereas you've actually combined that with physical stores as well. It sounds like a very sort of modern approach. Why did you choose to do that? And also you're doing it in places like the Philippines, South Africa. Why did you choose to take that approach?
Yeah, I think many of you wouldn't have heard of Tyme. In many ways, we're very similar to a Revolut or a Nubank. But a big difference is where we operate is very cash-heavy economies, starting with South Africa and now the Philippines. And if you have a pure digital strategy, it is actually very difficult to reach the full market. And so what we've done is we actually embed a digital bank into a physical retail ecosystem. So we partner in both markets with some of the largest retailers. And with that, we put in a kiosk. It looks like a bit like an ATM, but actually it's for origination, issues you a Visa debit card in real time. And then in those supermarkets, you can do real-time cash in and cash out. So effectively what we do is we partner to replicate the reach of a branch network. And why that is so important is in these markets is that, for one, you need to solve cash. In order to build a good digital business, you actually need to have cheap and easy cash in and cash out. And the second reason is around financial literacy, digital literacy, and trust. So there's low trust in the banks. And in these segments, especially if you're talking over 40, no one's going to touch a pure digital bank. So interestingly, of our 17 million plus customers in both markets, more have signed up through the physical channel with the help of an ambassador than they have the digital channel. And it's actually a lower cost of acquisition than the digital channel.
I see. So, and I think your co-founder is South African, so that probably speaks to why you sort of scaled up in South Africa as one of your early markets. But both of you very much speak to the idea that European entrepreneurs, we're often talking about European entrepreneurs, but Africa is just over there. The Middle East is, a couple of hours away, really, from here. So do you think that there's something stopping European entrepreneurs thinking that way in some way?
Okay. I'm impressed with the 250 million, by the way.
Do you think it's obviously cultural or?
Unfortunately, banking is very expensive too.
Yeah, right. We raised 7.5 million. It was still a huge struggle. So for European entrepreneurs to enter Africa, that's the main example. I think it's a matter of priorities. I also, InstaShop also entered Africa through Egypt mainly. That was one of the markets. Super attractive, but at the end of the day, even though we had very, very high volume of transactions over there, higher than, for example, the UAE, we were not able to get the absolute value out of it. So there's a big component over there in terms of currency, in terms of devaluation, stability of the currency. And generally, the tickets are quite smaller. So if I had to choose going to Africa versus, US or the Middle East, it probably would be the competitive intensity factor that would make me go for it. Less competition. We have, as Europeans, a better potentially experience in the space that we're in. So, yeah.
I mean, you saw...
But nothing stops us.
No, there isn't anything stopping us. So why are we not doing it more? Strange, isn't it?
I think there's a natural risk aversion. When we founded Tyme, we had it was a very mission-driven business to bring financial inclusion. So that's one of the reasons why. That's actually personally, I was working at Deloitte in management consulting. I was at a conference not dissimilar to this, and the founders of M-Pesa from Kenya were speaking, and I already knew I didn't want to be in management consulting the rest of my life, and then I basically moved to Africa and, stumbled upon the co-founders in South Africa who were starting this bank. So I think the mission-driven side of it.
You helped grow MTN mobile money in South Africa, didn't you? So you got a taste of the whole thing out there.
Yeah, we got a taste of it. And then, but it's interesting. I think in everything in life, my view, especially business, I think there's a big arbitrage on risk. I think people do not take enough risk. And even though, yes, going to South Africa and the Philippines is many reasons is harder, the markets are smaller, the TAM is smaller, but there's also a lot of positives. Competition's not as strong. You know, when we landed in Philippines and launched, it's like going back 15 years from South Africa in terms of quality of banking service. You know, we were sitting on net interest margins and lending that are 20 to 30% because the market doesn't clear and there's not a lot of competition. So, you know, with that higher risk, there's also, you know, potential for higher returns. So I think it's something that not enough people are looking into.
Is there such a thing as a market that's too emerging, that's too early? What do you think?
That's a good question. Listen, I'll tell you this. The effort that we put on InstaShop to build Egypt is the effort that we put in all other 7, 8 countries times 2, 3. So it's very hard to build a market in an emerging market. There's the infrastructure, everything. I don't think it's necessarily about it's too emerging. It's a lot about timing and the industry, right? So at some point, if you, based on the industry you're in, if you choose a market, you might enter too early. The infrastructure might not support you, or you might enter too late. Either case, you lose. So the timing combined with the emerging market for that industry plays the magic.
What do you think, Nick?
As a funny story, I mean, I think amongst the founders, we definitely can't think of a market that's too emerging. We got lucky in that we applied for a banking license in Pakistan 2 years ago, and we were declined. I think we were beat out. One of the players that beat us out was a fertilizer company. So there's a lot of stories there. I think, but you know, we probably dodged a bullet there. So I think if you asked our shareholders, are there certain markets that are too emerging, they would definitely say yes. I think on our, we're kind of also in it for a bit of the adventure, so maybe no.
Yes, probably did. In the case of Pakistan, I think right now. I mean, now what's going on right now is that John, you've put together your new venture, RevoTech. Does that mean anything? Is it just?
I'm getting name bullying.
I was
hope so.
googling RevoTech, and I forgot that it's RevoTech with an H on the end, and RevoTech without the H with a C on the end is something to do with car tires.
Car tires?
Yeah, something. It's like a car tire pressure gauge or something. So
I found that too when I googled his name.
Yeah.
Or sorry, RevoTech.
But I'm just kidding around. But what do you want to do with it now?
Okay, so how do you answer it? Okay, so it's RevoTech, so it's revolutionary technology.
Revolutionary.
Exactly.
Not Revo, as in revving.
I didn't know that verb.
Okay.
Okay, so so basically RevoTech, the whole proposition of it has to do with the fact that we really get educated, we get know-how, we get competency on cutting-edge technologies. And then we apply them into industries that we see as lagging or as having an overall experience. The main industry that we want to get into now, and we have have done a lot of product development, has to do with the healthcare space, and that's something we're going to be launching in the next months.
Do you want to give us any breaking news? Want to give us a hint?
You will have breaking news in a few months, so I'll do an article on TechCrunch.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing that.
But it's preventive diagnostics, the whole idea, and what we want to do is shift the way that people operate with their own health, because there's nothing more important than your own health. There's nothing more personal. So we want to shift it from a very firefighting and combat, a reactive mentality to something that's much more daily awareness and future-proof.
What are some of advice? You as entrepreneurs, you've obviously done some interesting things, and in a sense, I think you're something that the riskiest entrepreneurs we've had on our stage so far, and also that I've met for a while. Working in emerging markets, working in Egypt, in Middle East, in Philippines. What are some of the thoughts that you've had over the years about how to approach entrepreneurship? Do you think it's a lot of storytelling? Do you think it's about just finding the right investors, or what are some of the thoughts you have about for instance, when you meet another entrepreneur or maybe a young person who wants to be an entrepreneur, what sort of things do you look for that you think, right, this person's going to go somewhere?
I think it's similar to the previous panel, or the two panels before. I think it's someone who, is very mission driven. They have I guess what they're doing is very personal. If I think back to the day where I heard the M-Pesa founders speak, I had, butterflies in my stomach. I was so excited. And then I think the other thing maybe is that whole, I can't remember who it was saying, it's like a dog with a bone. I think, inevitably, especially if you go into emerging markets, I think you need that grit because I think it's harder to raise capital. There was many times where we almost, fell over. I'm sure he's had similar. So I would say kind of the purpose-based drive, and then also just a lot of grit.
Does it have to be, do you have to be an entrepreneur, do you have to have a personal connection to the problem you're trying to solve, or does that not matter too much? John?
I think it's definitely extremely better if you could relate to the problem. Like that's, for both, let's say, of the industries, I could relate to them. I had issues with supermarket delivery by phone, so I developed a solution for it. For the healthcare sector, my experiences with healthcare was always horrible. Like I don't appreciate the level of healthcare today. So again, that's an industry that I'm engaged and passionate about solving. So the passion probably comes to a certain extent from you relating to the problem personally.
What about the appetite of investors? We had a big investor panel here. Investors are usually very good about talking about, the kinds of people they want to meet, et cetera. But and then I got entrepreneurs who just complain about investors a lot of the time. So what are your thoughts about the appetite for risk from investors, and particularly from European investors? Because time and time again, there's been criticism that European investors just don't embrace risk. And this is probably one of the biggest air gaps, shall we say, between European investors and US investors, where US investors just go like, bang, here's a check, call me when it works. And the European investors say, like, I need your projections for 2 years, and when are you going to get revenues, etc. What do you think?
So I think for us operating in a place like South Africa or the Philippines, we've had, no luck with the U.S. investors, just because the Philippines and the South Africa are too small of markets, not on their radar. So actually, we have one of our earliest investors was European, but it was British impact investment, so BII. So it was more of a sovereign wealth impact fund. But I guess, in the markets we operate, we've mostly been off the radar of the large VC and growth equity in the US and Europe. So we had to kind of tough it out with more of local funds, which at times was very difficult because they're not as long-term thinking. But also I think hardened us a bit to be more profit-focused. And now with Nubank coming in, I think we've, hit a next phase in the business where actually the profile is raised, and we'll probably starting to interact with the likes of European investors and U.S. investors.
Right. Yeah. So there is that. This part, to some extent, is about the due diligence is too hard, so therefore, whatever. It's an emerging market. Goodbye.
Philippines is like the size of a state, TAM was in the U.S.
Right. John, what do you think?
U.S. VCs have it easy, okay? They have all the LPs of the pension fund, so it's okay. So the reality is they have a unified market. We should also cut some, the European VCs have a much harder time due to the scale of the market and the regulatory framework. So it's only kind of natural to be a reflection of the society you're in, right?
Yeah, you should hear the VCs I talked to who complain about Europe's AI regulation that's come in, that as well as all the other stuff.
But that said, things are changing to the better, step by step.
Well, with any luck, yeah. Lastly, last question to you guys, starting with you, Nate. Given the knowledge about emerging markets and doing things hard things in hard places, what advice would you give an ecosystem like Greece's? At the stage it's at right now in 2025, how would you approach it? Did you enjoy my question about 6-year-olds learning AI, for instance? there aren't any magic bullets at all, of course, but are there any lessons from doing entrepreneurship in places like the Philippines that can be applied to places like Greece or Europe?
So, I mean, I guess depends on who I'm talking to in the ecosystem. I think the government, I think the biggest thing, you know, this is, as an American, I feel like our biggest advantage, which is a bit scary what's happening now, has been the ability to attract talent, make it very easy for people to move there and start a business. So that would be my big advice for the government.
That's rapidly going into reverse, I think, isn't it?
That's the scary part between the universities and you know, immigration. But then I would say for entrepreneurs who are looking to move out to emerging markets within, you know, Greece and moving overseas, I think there's a lot of opportunity. What I would encourage that's worked very well for us is partnership. So I think, you know, there is a lot of risk in going to markets that have less political stability, like a Philippines, for example. But there's also a lot of, you know, local conglomerates, local families who want to invest in technology businesses, in particular when the next, you know, second and third generation of these large conglomerates and families are now kind of taking over. Yeah. So there's actually a very good match you can make there.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Greek shipping families have been investing in tech over the last few years, for instance. John, what do you think?
So I would put definitely education at the top, but I would start it a bit later. So, you know, 10 years old, let's say, let them enjoy some innocence and, you know, develop whatever they want in the earlier age, artists and so on. AI for me is just a tool. So to the question before, I don't think we should teach them AI. They should just probably eventually just learn how to use it. Now, Greece has to just cut a lot of red tape. I think it's happening. They're digitalizing a lot of the processes, which is fantastic. We have the Endeavor organization over here that, you know, is helping us in every single aspect of evolving the tech ecosystem. And I think it's just a snowball effect in the terms that, okay, the snowball is still small. We're not getting the huge exits that we would like, you know, 100, 200, 300 million, which is nothing, let's say, for other markets. But we do see a super rapid trend. And I do believe that, you know, in 10 years from now, we're going to have multi-billion exits as long as we keep a healthy trend as we do now.
Fantastic. Well, an optimistic note on which to end. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to being here. Please connect over drinks. Please connect with me as well. Come and get my WhatsApp. I have... oh, thank you. Thank you very much to TechCrunch. Thank you very much to StrictlyVC. Thank you very much to my colleague, and to the TechCrunch team. And we shall see you again in Athens. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.